Welcome back. So we continue our dialogue with another prominent business leader, Linda Leopold. She's the head of responsible artificial intelligence and data at a global fashion retailer, H&M Group. Linda has a very long career in the media industry. She was editor-in-chief of a critically acclaimed fashion magazine called Bonn. And she's the author of 2 non-fiction books. She's passionate about the intersection between fashion and culture, science, technology, and human passions and everything. So I give the floor to Linda for her presentation, and I'll see you again when she's done.
Okay, hello everyone. I hope you can hear me and see me. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk about our approach to responsible AI at H&M Group. And let's start behind the scenes. In January this year, the AI department at H&M Group moved into a new office in Stockholm. A very nice office, but the walls were a bit empty. They needed art, so we decided to create some. And as it is an AI office, it of course needed some AI-generated art. These are the H&M Group values. You will find the posters like these illustrating the values at most of our offices. So we used these as a starting point and then began to play around with different types of AI art techniques in a program called Runway ML. We tried some crazy stuff like converting text to image, but then eventually we went for a classic technique, at least in the AI world, as it's more than 4 years old. It's called the neural style transfer. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but what it does is basically to adapt an image according to a specific style. It could be the style of an artist or some specific aesthetic. So we decided to go for Kandinsky. So here you see the AI-generated abstract expressionist version of We Are One Team, constant improvement, keep it simple, entrepreneurial spirit, cost-conscious, and straightforward and open-minded. And funny enough, just by chance, the only one of the 7 values that we didn't use any AI on was we believe in people, which you see here to the left, which is handmade in fabric. So what do we do in this office? How do we at H&M Group use artificial intelligence in our operations? I joined the company in 2018, and at that time we had already been working with AI for a few years. And today our AI projects span across the entire value chain. So for example, we are using AI to better predict demand so that we can produce the right products for our customers, the things they really want and love. We also use AI to make sure we have the right type and quantity of products in the right store at the right time. And we use it for personalization to give our customers more relevant recommendations and offers. And what my team does is to lead our work in the area that we call responsible AI, making sure that we work with AI in a sustainable and ethical way, asking ourselves not only if we are legally compliant, but if we are doing the right thing. And being a value-driven company with a very ambitious sustainability goals, taking an active role in this area was very natural to us. But I remember when we started to talk about responsible AI 2 years ago, we could still get these surprised questions like, what do you mean by that? Why are you doing it? In an AI context, we are, after all, operating in a fairly low-risk industry. But a lot has happened since then. And today it's almost impossible to talk about AI without talking about ethics and the societal aspects of the technology, no matter which industry you're in. And why is that? Well, for a few different reasons. First of all, AI is a very powerful technology that can be used for many new applications and in many new contexts, for good or for bad. The exact same type of algorithm can be used to improve healthcare or to produce fake news videos. AI can also automate tasks previously performed by humans. And even with the best intentions, things can go wrong. As most AI systems learn from historical data or by interacting with the world, they have a tendency to reproduce and amplify any existing prejudice and inequalities in society if they are not handled properly. I think we have all seen examples like these of some of the early public missteps caused by these self-learning systems, like chatbots becoming racist, triggered by comments on Twitter, or image recognition systems trained on unrepresentative data. None of these were meant to cause any harm, but yet they did. When we created our internal responsible AI framework, we didn't start with a blank sheet. We based our goals and our tools on our existing sustainability strategy, our human rights commitment, and our company core values. And we set these two overall goals for responsible AI. First, to use AI to reach our sustainability goals, such as having a climate positive value chain by 2040. And secondly, to work with AI in a responsible way, which means actively working to prevent causing any unintentional harm with our AI solutions. And one of the first things that we did was to create an assessment tool, a checklist that has been used by all our AI teams since then. It contains questions centered around these 9 principles. Our AI should be focused, beneficial, fair, transparent, governed, collaborative, reliable, respecting privacy, and secure. This checklist is a 2-page document with around 30 questions. It's long enough to cover the most important areas, but also short enough to be easy and practical to use. We call it a checklist, but actually it's more of a conversation starter. It helps the AI teams to ask themselves the right questions. So many questions in the checklist are intentionally phrased in an open way to spark a discussion. For example, instead of asking, does the AI product have a negative effect on any vulnerable groups? We ask, have you discussed how the AI product affects vulnerable groups? It's just a tiny difference in wording that helps you think in another way and encourages you to have that conversation in your team. So if this is what we, and I assume most companies working with AI, are striving for, in reality, it's not always that simple. Even with strong company values and strong principles for responsible AI, there will most likely be situations when it's difficult for the AI teams to tell right from wrong. For example, what happens when values are in conflict with each other, or when different stakeholders' interests clash? How do you prioritize and how do you make your decisions? So we want to help our AI product teams to navigate these gray zones and to help them find the right answers. If the checklist can help to find answers for real challenges, we have also created another tool where people get to think about problems that doesn't yet exist. We call it the Ethical AI Debate Club. And here people get to discuss totally fictional scenarios, ethical dilemmas related to AI, things that could potentially happen in the fashion industry in a near future. We have arranged these debate sessions both internally and at external events. And what we do is during the sessions, we give the participants an ethical dilemma. We divide them into 2 groups and give the groups a standpoint each that they have to argue for, no matter what their personal opinions on the topic are. And then after some discussion within their groups, they meet for a debate. And I will now show you one example of what a dilemma can look like. In this story, there is a clash between the ambition to always listen to the customer and then, on the other hand, the company's values.
One of your fashion company's core values is diversity. You want every single one of your customers globally to feel included. Throughout the shopping experience, they should feel like you are talking directly to them. As part of this ambition, you are letting the customer decide what the AI-generated models on your website look like. The customer gets to choose their skin color, gender expression, and body shape. This quickly becomes a big hit. Most customers are doing it, and media praise the initiative. The customized models are only visible to the person who created them, but you have access to all the metadata. And looking at it does not reveal what you hoped for. Instead of increasing diversity, this effort has led to the promotion of an extremely narrow beauty ideal. It is like turning the clock back several decades. It is not what you wanted, but apparently what your customers want. And the customer is always right, right?
So in this case, one team would argue for keeping the service, while the other team would argue for stopping it. And sometimes we let the audience vote after the debates, and there is usually no consensus, which I think shows how difficult these questions can be, even if the right thing to do perhaps had seemed very obvious at first. And the idea with the debate club is not to solve the dilemmas, it is really to help people practice their thinking and their way of reasoning, and also for people to get familiar with the broad range of ethical challenges that can arise with the use of AI. The reason we do this in the form of storytelling and debate is really to engage people, to spark their imagination, because our human brain loves stories. When we have arranged debate sessions, both within the company and at external events, we don't only invite people working with AI, we have had a mix of people with different backgrounds and different expertise. And not only do the discussions get more interesting when all these perspectives meet, this topic is also too important to leave just to people working with AI. Because after all, what we are talking about here is a technology that already has a great impact on people's lives and will have so even more in the future. So the more people we can involve in these discussions, the better. From the very beginning, when we started working with AI at H&M Group, the human perspective has been key to us. And we often talk about amplified intelligence. And what we mean by that is that we see AI as a tool that helps us enhance our already existing intelligence, our knowledge, and our creativity within the company. So AI is not a substitute for human intelligence, it's an amplifier, because with AI we can make sharper decisions and then at the same time help our colleagues to focus on the most relevant and creative parts of their work. And in this combination, this collaboration between human and machine intelligence, between science and art, data and gut feeling, that's really where the magic happens. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Linda, very, very inspiring. Actually, you've been touching really deeply some of the key subjects we have been discussing over the day. The trade-off between meaningfulness and desirability. Is the customer always right? That was a great example. I also grateful you showed the painting of the School of Athens from Raphael, which, by the way, for those who don't know, is the painting of Politecnico di Milano, which was the university I come from. So it's the logo there. So it's a very inspiring painting because it's a beautiful representation of knowledge and creativity. I have a couple of questions. The first one maybe it sounds a little trivial and maybe not very, but you showed this first example of artificial intelligence with all these photos, and then you choose Kandinsky as a background. Why Kandinsky? That's just a curiosity. So there should be a meaning there because what is interesting is that the machine, once you choose the style, the machine does the rest. The point is, why that style?
Exactly. And maybe that's where the human creativity comes into play here. Well, I would say there is no deeper meaning behind it. It was purely from aesthetic reasons. We thought that the Kandinsky version looked the best.
Yeah. And by the way, the aesthetical and reasons are very meaningful. There is always a meaning behind that that we struggle to capture. The second thing is you did this very interesting example. Actually, I was very attracted by this example of the dilemma between the customer is always right, which is desirability, we call it, and but is it this good for society at large, which is meaningfulness and purpose. And can I challenge you a little bit? I mean, we are here is a conference, but we have been working a lot in the space of fashion. And that there's this dilemma between these two things. It's very interesting. Imagine that now I build a scenario, and the scenario is, imagine that with AI, we discussed this before about the removing limitations to scale. You can give customer, you can design a dress in the moment, because artificial intelligence takes a photo of you and perfectly makes your dress the way you like. So in a way, with artificial intelligence, we could have one dress per person every time you use it. So in a way, artificial intelligence could push the paradigm of fast fashion even stronger. And customers apparently are happy. Is this always right? So is that meaningful? Because you can push that even more, but then there are some implications. So, and H&M, I think, is asking themselves this kind of question, but it's a very interesting dilemma between, we know that people love a dress for every occasion, every time, and so on, but then there is a little bit of implication around that. How do we solve this dilemma?
But let me challenge you there then. If you produce the things that the customers really need and love, they will most likely keep the clothes for a longer time.
Yes,
if you have a favorite sweater, you will wear it for ages, right?
Exactly. Actually, in a way, that's how you overcome the paradox. It may be that if you really do something that you really need, that is not an average between different people, then you fall in love because it's yours. So in a way, that could be a way to overcome the paradigm of fast fashion and throwing things away.
Exactly. And then circularity is so important for the fashion industry. Yeah. We need to move from this linear model to a circular model.
Yeah. So another interesting challenge that we saw is your willingness to engage the internal teams around it. So do you find that designers and people in the team have the same kind of attitude toward sustainability and purpose, or do you see different perspectives in different parts of the organizations?
That's a good question. I mean, sustainability is so much built into the company's core values and our way forward. So it's very much present in every discussion. But then, of course, if you look at my area of responsible AI, that's a new area of sustainability. So I really see this as defining what sustainability means in a digital age. And it's quite different from what sustainability meant maybe 10 or 20 years ago. So there are so many new questions arising with the use of AI and other technology.
There is a question in this regard from David Gallop that says, was there any critical event that brought you to the realization that you needed a checklist to govern the team's use of AI? So there was something special that triggered all this process.
No, it wasn't really. And we are still working in a fairly low risk area. But as we have sustainability so much in the core of the business, it felt very natural to apply this on the AI area as well. And we started looking into how we could use AI to reach our sustainability goals. That's how it started. And we could clearly see that with the use of AI, we can be much sharper in aligning supply and demand, which obviously have great impact on reducing CO2 emissions as well. So we started with that, the good part, but then eventually we also started looking into the other part. What about things like algorithmic bias, etc.? How can we translate our human rights commitment to an AI context? And that's how the checklist came about.
Interesting. So, Linda, thank you very much, because you've been fantastically touching all the subject, and especially this channel you put was a very good example to understand how not easy it is to address this dilemma. Also, the question I asked you about fast fashion and long-term commitment is very interesting. How you show that there are ways to overcome the paradoxes, the trade-off, and there are ways to make things good, both in terms of desirability and in terms of sustainability. So thank you very much for being with us. Very much appreciated. And I hope we'll stay connected to the garden for the next coming years.
Lovely to be here.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you. And we move to Mattia. Mattia, thank you for being patient before, and also trying to support me with the research so far. So the research you will show is something that we have been developing recently, and it's a kind of window where we will go in the next coming years. When I joined SSE and the Garden, I've been doing a lot of research on design, meaningfulness, and how to make products that are, again, more meaningful to people. But there was something was escaping me about what was the next step. And in the last few weeks and months, we have been reflecting what is the future of our research and where should we go. And this is a moment for us to share with the community more or less where we are going, and to have some feedback. Are we going in the right direction? Are we capturing the big problems here? Because as always a researcher, you ask yourself, the worst thing you can do, and actually this is the subject of your presentation, is that you address the wrong problem. This is for designers, innovators, and for researchers. You don't want to make research on something that is the wrong problem. So actually your presentation will be all about this. How do you find, or maybe not even find, but you design a right problem? So Matteo, you will do this presentation in cooperation with two students, Nico and Max. You will introduce yourself when they will come. Matteo, you're a prominent professor here at the House of Innovation, co-founder with me of the Garden. You're great history of, maybe not as long as mine, luckily for you. You have also a great history in front of you, but an inspiring to do research in innovation and design thinking. So I'm proud of being a sparring partner with you in the Garden. So I leave you the floor, and I think really this is the moment to say, are we, me, you, the community, addressing the right problems?
Absolutely, and I will give this presentation together with Nico Kiel and Maximilian Meyer, who are students from the Master in Business and Management at the Stockholm School of Economics. So let me pick up from where Roberto left. In the age of AI, humans should focus on finding problems that are worth being addressed. And Roberto also told us we need to think more about problem finding, and we need new tools. Now, let's be clear, a focus on problems rather than solutions is nothing new. Einstein told us many times, especially what we should do if we have 1 hour to save the world. And already in the 80s, with the start of the computer revolution, there was a debate between two great thinkers, Herbert Simon and Csikszentmihalyi, in the field of psychology and design, problem solving vis-a-vis problem finding. In the management field, we have picked up these insights, and of course we have tried to implement them in our organizational context. Let's assume you are an innovator and you need to find new problems worth solving. How do you go about that? Say you have these books on innovation management, you bought them in Arlanda or Heathrow, and you find a number of suggestions. If it's about problem finding, then problems are out there waiting to be discovered. They're hiding. And indeed, what you learn from marketing people is that users have latent needs of which they are unaware. And of course, you want to surface them. How do you do that? Well, design thinkers will tell you, go out and observe their behaviors, immerse in their natural habitat, so kind of do ethnographic research. And once you have collected all this rich data with an outside-in approach, design thinking even tell you, look at the extremes of the population, and it tells you, try to have no preconceptions, no prejudices, be as objective as possible as a child would. After you have done all this, it's about analyzing what you have found, And the key type of analysis here is root cause analysis, where you dig deep in order to find the fundamental reasons for users' challenges. And thanks to that, Eureka, you have found a problem which you will use in order to find a solution. It will drive your solution. So this kind of perspective is very positivistic because it assumes that problems have their own existence, they are out there, and also it's very analytical, a kind of engineering perspective. Now, Roberto and I, and also other scholars, have some kind of issue with this kind of, with this type of problem finding, with this approach. What are our issues? Well, first of all, it's very difficult to let go your cognitive frames. You have, they are very ingrained in you after so many years of practice and of successes, maybe. And, you're gonna see what these frames make you see. And it's very, it's called fixation in the academic world, and it's well explained by the adage, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything will look like a nail. And, managers are not trained anthropologists, and no matter how hard they try, and of course a two-day design thinking workshop is not really trying hard. Also, with root cause analysis, you reinforce your frames because you're digging deep in the problem within the same frame. You understand the problem better, but you look it in the same way. And if the frames are obsolete, it's like you're digging your own grave. Second concern we have is that if the problems are out there, they are nobody's and everybody's. They're up for grabs to anyone. There is no spatial relationship between you, your motivation, your capabilities, and that problem. No magic fit. Third, with the root cause analysis, you have a map of the problem, all the different components, but it's also very static because it looks at the past of the problem, the antecedents. But we live in a context that changes very rapidly and radically, and it's quite likely that the map will be quite old when you when you start working on it or trying to find those solutions with that. So we think that there is an alternative approach that could be very powerful and builds on principles that are quite specular to this mainstream problem finding that I've been discussing. Let me use the case of Prodigy Finance to introduce this kind of a new view, a different view of problem finding, which we call problem reframing. We are in 2007. Cameron Stevens from South Africa, a MBA candidate at the top French business school called INSEAD. And he basically realized there is an unaddressed problem, very pervasive, which is you have all these young, smart people from emerging countries who want to change their lives and their careers by attending, by participating, by studying abroad at top MBA programs. These programs are very expensive, especially if you live in emerging countries where the currencies are soft. And often they don't have the money to self-finance the program. One option will be to get a loan. The problem is that banks will not give them a loan. They don't have such products also because the way they assess credit worthiness is local. So they give loans to local residents because foreign credit reports are unreliable because different standards and different formats. And also it's their logic, bank's logic is very backward looking. It's based on past credit records and history. So basically these young people do not qualify to get loans. No credit history, no collaterals. foreigners, no cosigners, local cosigners that can substitute them. So, either you ask your family and friends for big sacrifices, or you give up your dreams. So, Cameron Stevens, who went through these problems himself, because he was from South Africa, he didn't have the money to pay the MBA program, and he had to postpone the start of the program by 1 year in order to save enough money to pay for the program. So he knew about this problem and eventually found a solution to that. Basically, a new model for assessing creditworthiness. No more backward looking, but forward looking. Look, these people are very smart, huge potential. They've been admitted by the most selective business schools who have been running selection process forever. They're very good at that. And they're gonna make a lot of money after their MBA programs, very likely. So now we live in a context where there is, better algorithms that allow to predict based on big, rich data, their future career prospects and their income. So let's use that instead of looking at the past. Also, Cameron had very rich data, access to data from business schools because he was kind of, already inside INSEAD and had good connections also with other business schools to train the algorithm and estimate the ability of the students to repay the debt. When it comes to local, it doesn't make any sense. Why loan practice at banks is local when everything is moving? People, goods, and people, especially for education purposes. So he spent a lot of energy and time to make sure that the contracts at PRODIGY Finance, that's the name of his new venture, were enforceable across many countries. So basically, he solved the problem, except that it didn't. Why is that? Because banks that were still needed to fund the entire loan program at PRODIGY Finance didn't jump on board. They didn't see it as a solution because the whole model and logic ran counter to banks' assumptions, okay? To the fact that banks were so focused on the history of the people and they were so local in their practices. Okay, so there were very high barriers for banks, and in fact they didn't join. So what he did is he realized that he couldn't solve the problem by keeping that economic frame, but he had to find another frame. So he thought, okay, besides stable financial returns, what's another side of the story? The story of allowing people with dreams from emerging countries, to change their life, realize their objectives, and also eventually make an impact in their own countries after their education. So basically, he thought about the social aspect of this kind of education, the emotional gratification that you might have by allowing these people to realize their dreams, the growth of future business leaders, the ability to reduce the gap between developed and developing countries. Having found this frame, with this new frame came the solution, because he realized that banks might not be sensitive to this social frame, but banks are not the only possible sources of funding. So basically, he changed his target audience when it comes to the actors that would have provided the funds. So first, he implemented a P2P, a peer-to-peer model. He reached out to to alumni of INSEAD and other business schools, and he matched them as lenders with individual borrowers, current students. And these people, the lenders, the alumni, they wanted, to create this emotional connection, some kind of distance adoption with the students, and they started they started the loan program thanks to this peer-to-peer model. Of course, it had some scalability issues. So eventually they moved to a community investing model. And the model was one where PRODIGY Finance was issuing bonds to impact investors, wealthy individuals and family offices who care not only about financial returns, but also about their social impact. And in fact, they could invest by affinity. They could buy school-specific bonds if they had some kind of an emotional attachment to a particular business school, or regional bonds if they wanted to help students, for example, in Africa or in India. Very successful story. They lent more than $1 billion as of now. They changed the lives of 20,000 people. Eventually, banks joined the platform, but only when the economic model was proven. So just as a kind of demonstration that they reacted only to the economic frame. What is the point I'm trying to make? That is not about finding the right problem when it comes to problem reframing. The problem was there in front of their nose. They were aware of that. Banks and the different stakeholders, they just didn't see it for what it could be. And the old economic frame did not allow to solve the problem. It was critical to shape the problem, to design it in a better and more meaningful way. To build lenses to see it differently, to give the problem a new life and meaning. So let me just summarize a few principles underlying this problem reframing approach. It's very inside out. It starts from you, from a malaise with the status quo. Cameron Stevens, he went through that experience. He couldn't understand these people have huge talent and huge motivation. They're not going to ruin their reputation by not repaying the debt. They're now part of the professional elite network after their MBA. They will do their best to repay the debt. How come no one is giving them money? How come banks are so local as everything is global? How come you can't use these new technologies, algorithm to predict future outcomes based on current data? There was an unfit between the context and the current ways, the current way of working. Asking why? But this is an important point. When you try to reframe a problem, it's not the why question that you ask in order to find root causes. It's a different why question. For root causes, it's basically a question like, why does this problem occur? You're going back in time, it's backward looking, and you are digging and going narrower. They did that. I mean, they found the reasons why there was that kind of problem, the fact that these students couldn't be funded. But it was irrelevant to find the root causes, because in that frame, there was no solution. They were stuck. Instead, you need to ask a different kind of why question. Why does the problem matter? And when you do that, you elevate the problem because you connect to fundamental human needs, aspects of the real experience, what Roberto calls meaning, or late Clayton Christensen calls job to be done. And also, as you ask why does it matter, you are expanding the problem, opening the space for different solutions. And then, you can use different questioning techniques in order to have some kind of problem pivot that allows you to reframe the problem, to see it from different perspectives. A kind of side jump. For example, what is another reason why it is important today? Why the problem is important today? Why it's important that they manage to go through the MBA program and not only learn, but also make an impact on society. And it's not just about you as a lender getting financial returns, but it's really about making a social impact. This problem reframing is very constructionist. You are designing the problem. At the very same time you think about that, you are creating all these connections between different realms of the human experience. You are exploring the possibility of the problem, the future of the problem. And it's very purpose-powered. You know, it's not a chance that Cameron saw the problem, reframed it, and then solved it, because he had capabilities, he had a great understanding of the situation, but also he was very committed to solve it. He couldn't accept that people with a lot of potential didn't have enough equal opportunities to study what they wanted to study where they wanted to study. So it's very purpose-powered, and this is also demonstrated by the fact that even today, Prodigy Finance focuses on students in emerging countries. That's the 80% of their borrowers' population. I'm getting to conclusion when it comes to my slides, and then I will leave the floor to Nico and Max. If problem reframing is purpose-powered, then it's very in line with what Csikszentmihalyi said back in, at the end of the 80s, that when it comes to problem finding and also problem solving, it's affection and motivation is critical. It's not just logic. And these are things that computer models cannot replicate yet. So the message is that you should not deframe, do without frames as mainstream, some mainstream innovation literature is telling you, the beginner's mindset. Use your frames, design new frames that allow to find more meaningful problems. Biased is good, and these frames are all yours, and it's those frames that make the problems worth solving. Worth to whom? To you. You can really find this fit between the purpose you have and the progress you want people to have in their life, what Roberto calls meaning, so this purpose-meaning fit. And this means that innovation is very much about leadership, because with these new frames you start a new direction, but it's just the start, the world is not there yet. And you need to bring people on board. You need to bring others on board to realize it. Now, realizing purpose is not common. A lot of companies have purpose, but they might just talk about that and not put that into action, into what they do for their customers and for their employees. And Nico and Max indeed have done research about this topic. So I leave the floor to them.
Yes, many thanks, Matteo, for the great presentation and the great insights. Indeed, we want to dig deeper into how firms differ in signaling their purpose, which is part of our master thesis at SSE. And for this, we want to start with a little quiz. Please find a survey again in the poll section in Hopin next to the chat section. And please answer which corporate statement you think belongs to the Swedish retail and investment bank SEB. On the right, you see 3 purpose statements, and only one of them is the one of SEB. The first is to deliver world-class service to our customers. Second is we save people money so they can live better. And third is by enabling our clients to trust their potential, we deliver to our shareholders and the society.
And
all right.
For those who don't know about SEB, is of course a leading bank in Sweden, and also a corporate partner.
Yes, for sure, leading bank in Sweden, and also increasingly large throughout Europe. I'm currently in Frankfurt, Germany, and I actually just talked to a friend of mine who started working here in Frankfurt for SEB, and they're increasing their investment banking division here. So large Swedish bank and increasingly large throughout Europe. All right. Can we see anything in regards to
some percentages? Who got it right?
So we have 60%, 62% saying that it's the last one, the third one, that matches to SEB.
Okay, great. Okay. That's a cool result, actually. Yes, it turns out that you voted quite exactly as we anticipated it. A little percentage were correct, and some of you were wrong, and the vast majority of you actually was really wrong. And that's very understandable if you consider that all of these statements, especially comparing the retailer Walmart with SEB as a bank, are pretty generic. And what company the third statement belongs to, you will see at the end of the presentation. Now, you could ask, so what does this actually tell us? And the answer is nothing really. This is exactly the thing. When we look at purpose in theory and practice, we see that the emphasis is almost always on how purpose should be communicated. Scholars and companies mainly focus on developing verbal artifacts. And this leaves us with a multitude of definitions of all kinds of statements, be it mission, vision, purpose, values, and so on. And it leaves companies with very high-minded aspirations that on the other side have little to no impact on customers, employees, and on other shareholders and stakeholders. And it's not only us seeing that purpose is being detached from what companies actually do. It's also McKinsey finding in a study that even though a large majority of employees finds purpose important, very few see an actually impact of purpose statements. And in another study, Strategy N sees that an even smaller fraction feels connected to the company's purpose. However, on the other side, there are companies that are able to actually signal their purpose as part of their product. Therefore, in our thesis, we compare companies with a communication-driven approach to purpose that communicate purpose through statements, artifacts, vision, mission, purpose, as we just said, and companies with a design-driven approach to purpose that communicate purpose through their products, services, and all related artifacts like descriptions of apps. And we argue that communication-driven firms use a lot of purpose vocabulary in their purpose statements, but when it comes to product-related artifacts like app descriptions, they use feature vocabulary. And meanwhile, design-oriented firms use purpose vocabulary both in their corporate statements, if they have one, and in their product-related artifacts, like app descriptions. And what we also observed is that when firms have a design-driven approach to purpose, this might also be recognizable in their products.
Yeah, exactly. And in order to evaluate these initial hypotheses, we chose to focus on the banking industry. In this empirical setting, we explicitly looked at two distinct groups. So for one, we looked at established banks, so let's say HSBC, Deutsche Bank, or BNP. And for the other, we looked at fintechs, so upcoming startups that operate in the financial sector and aim at disrupting it by offering new products. From these firms, we collected corporate artifacts such as purpose statements, mission statements, vision statements, and all that good stuff, because those are representatives of what Max just introduced as the communication-driven approach. And in order to evaluate the design-driven approach, we looked, which refers to the way they embed purpose in their product offerings. We collected information on how they describe their product. And in order to make it a bit more comparable, we looked at one specific product, so their retail banking apps that they use for customers. So here on the next slide, we see how many statements are issued by fintechs and how many are actually issued by banks. And what's immediately striking is that banks tend to issue much more statements or are much more likely to publish them in the first place. So we see that banks actually tend to utilize this communication-driven approach much more. When we analyzed the text, so when we did a textual analysis of the data that we gathered, we actually saw that in their app descriptions, fintechs use much more purpose-related language. Actually, they use it to 26% more than banks. And this suggests that fintechs prefer to signal purpose by embedding it into their products. And in order to demonstrate this or these preliminary findings even more, we brought two interesting cases along with us today. So on the left side, we see Monzo, which is a London-based banking startup. And on the right, we see Santander, which is a large Spanish universal bank. And here you can see how they describe their apps in the App Store. So in the case of Monzo, we clearly see that they use purpose-driven language. So they talk about, for example, what their mission is, what they want to aspire to, or what they care about. But Santander focuses much more on feature-oriented language. So they try to push their technical details. For example, they share how you can log into the account using Face ID. And we are no design experts, so we might have to link up with Marlene later. But we believe that this distinct difference in focus on the approaches is also visible in the design of the app. So Monzo embeds their mission of making banking work for everybody by offering multiple individual home screens to the users, while Santander basically only focuses on hard technical features. And while in our research, we chose to focus on startups in the banking industry and established firms, we also see this sort of duality of purpose-driven and feature-driven product descriptions among established firms. So this here is the original advertisement from the Apple iPod in early 2001. And the only text that actually features displays the purpose of that very product. So 1,000 songs in your pocket. And this, however, is an ad from Intel's Pocket Concert, which is a direct competitor to the iPod, and which was released around the same time. So next to it being much less beautiful, as we think, we also see a clear focus on technical language here. So it pushes how many mbits we have and stuff like that. And it thereby sort of fails to focus or highlight its purpose. So we urge you to focus less on features and more on purpose. Let purpose guide and influence your product development efforts and embed it into every outcome and action of your product or firm. And do not let purpose degenerate to a meaningless and hollow corporate statement as those that we showed to you in the beginning of the presentation. So if corporate statements become this generic, they cannot really serve as an appropriate differentiator between firms. And for all of those who picked C, which was actually the large majority, this wasn't actually a corporate statement of a real firm at all. But it was generated by us using the words that most often occur in the corporate statements of banks. And the fact that we could fool some of you, or in this case, actually many of you, sort of proves that these statements do not mean much at all. Thank you very much. Back to you, Matthias.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very interesting, to see that the majority actually picked the statement generated by artificial intelligence. I don't know how to interpret this. I know, but maybe I keep it for myself.
Yeah, we can bring this to our audience and try to share, why sometimes we stay so high on parts of it that we cannot make it happen for you. So design is an answer for that. So now it's time to move to the last part of our event, and it's a very, very important part in which that the I'm very, very proud. So Nico, Maximilian, and Mattia, thank you very much for sharing with us our research, and the Nico and Maximilian, good luck for the continuation, because you have still to discuss this at the school. And we passed the last moment of this event, which is as always last but not least, because it's the most important moment that we want to celebrate. It's a very special moment for the House of Innovation, and especially for the Garden, and for Stockholm School of Economics. And this year, for the first time, we coordinated the Michael Treschow Scholarship. What is the Michael Treschow Scholarship? It's a scholarship that has been handled before, and for the first time we decided, we coordinated with Michael Treschow to deliver this scholarship that is support each year a talented student who intends to use design principle and practice to improve organization, businesses, and to enhance their contribution to society and human lives. Someone can wonder why a scholarship on design is being coordinated with the Stockholm School of Economics. And this is actually the core of the reason why the Garden does exist. We believe that there is an increasing convergence between design and leadership. The Garden is the center for design and leadership. Why? Because first of all, not only because design is a proof that design is becoming essential for the economic activities, but there is something more. We believe that design can be a perspective that can help leadership to find a new way to deal with businesses and economics. We know that, as Tommy said before in our event, that there was a statement last year, profit is not anymore, shareholder value is not anymore the main driver that drives businesses. So we are searching for something else, and we believe that design can provide a new perspective to this. For two reasons: because design is driven by meaningfulness. So by definition, design is making sense of things. So especially making things that are meaningful for users, for people out there, and not inward oriented but outward oriented. You make meaning through the things you do, and this is what we saw before with Nico and Max, how design-oriented companies are very strong in bringing design into the product they make. And second, design is driven by action, so it's action-driven. So we can say that it's leadership in action driven by meaningful sense. So we don't bring design and leadership together because we want to turn designers into leaders or leaders into designers. Actually, we want this kind of tension, but the Michael Treschow Scholarship help us to bring the best talents of design closer to the best talents in economics. So it's a great opportunity. We are very proud that we can organize this.
Absolutely. And I think it's time to introduce the people behind the scholarship. Of course, the person who initiated everything, Michael Treschow. Michael is chairman of the investment committee of the Wallenberg Foundations, and he's been chairman of many leading Swedish firms like Ericsson, Electrolux, and also he's been the CEO of Atlas Copco and of Unilever. Together with Michael, as soon as he joins us, is Lina Wilkens, and Lina won this award in 2017. Lina is a designer by background, of course, but she's also an entrepreneur because she founded her own jewelry creation startup called Lina Will in 2019, and she works as a prototyping technician at this Glasgow School of Art. Originally a German, Lina has been living in Sweden and in Scotland, where she is right now. So Lina, why don't we start with you? If you can tell us a little bit how winning the Michael Treschow Scholarship changed your life, what it meant for you.
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me all right and everything?
Yes.
Yes, okay, very good. Yes, so thank you for the introduction. I received the Michael Treschow Scholarship in 2017 after I graduated from my bachelor in industrial design from Kunstfach University. And what the scholarship ultimately did for me is I got really interested in the politics of objects at that time. And 2017, it doesn't seem very long ago, but when we think back, that was before Me Too, that was before Black Lives Matter, and like bringing all of these discussions in more of a mainstream realm in society. And the scholarship really validated for me that the projects that I was putting out there, which very much dealt with feminist issues, with issues of environmental sustainability as well, were valid, and that there was interest in furthering me in my ambitions, and that I was also bringing value to the table for companies that I could work with in the future.
Thank you, Lina. You know, you are a designer by background, but you're also now getting exposed to many business challenges with your own company that you lead. I just wonder about the combination of these two souls that you are developing, design and business, so which is at the basis of what we do at the Garden, the logic of the scholarship. How do the two souls interact within you? I mean, how does design help you being a better businesswoman, and how does being exposed to business challenges help you being a better designer?
Mm-hmm. I think what design and going through the different stages of design, I started sort of very applied, working a lot with my hands, going to product design, digital design, up to service design, systems and innovation in my master's. And I think that that definitely gave me an ability to be agile and to understand and interpret circumstances and to shift my way of working. I think that's definitely what I learned from design, what I'm bringing into how I lead my business. But how business also influences my design is definitely a dose of legitimized pragmatism, I would say, in the venture that I started myself in 2019, which was made possible by the funds that came with the scholarship very much. I am obviously faced with financial constraints, considering feasibility of what I want to do, the ideas that I want to have, but ultimately having to put them out there as a one-woman show. But I think this experience also gives me the ability to understand much larger projects way better when I'm working for a company whose projects are more complex than mine, that I have that experience of working all the way through with a product or a project.
Thank you, Lina.
Hope that answered your question.
You did. Michael joined.
Yeah.
Yes, Michael joined.
Good, Lina. Good to see you.
It's good to see you as well, Michael.
Good to see you all three.
Good evening, Michael. Michael, welcome and happy to see you. We have been introducing the scholarship, and we will try to explain this strange marriage between design and the School of Economics, and people may wonder why. And of course, we're trying to give our own explanation, but maybe it's a good question for you. So why did you think about SSE, which is apparently strange to be in design close to business, but the point of the scholarship comes from you, and you're a businessman, maybe says a lot.
No, I think I've all my professional life been fascinated and inspired by the concept of design. And particularly, I would say, the design thinking. And it started early on in one of my first jobs when I was responsible for power tools, and power tools in interaction with human beings. It's not an easy concept, but because they twist and they're cold and they are noisy and they have oil, etc. So all that addressed that question. And of course, then it became more environmental issues as well, like trying to make refrigerators free on free, and actually also energy efficient. So that also became a matter of how do we do it? And I think probably one of the biggest challenges was to make a mobile phone in its early, you are too young to remember the first mobile phones who were big like something like this. And taking a mobile phone from a technical product to a consumer product demanded a lot of design thinking, because that was not obvious. And a lot of failures and a lot of mistakes were done in that. And I think that a lot in business is about the creativity, which I normally find in the design environment, and perhaps also in art. That type of thinking will be needed more and more, I believe, in our life and in our business. So when I was asked quite some years back, what do I wish for that birthday? And I said, I would like to start a scholarship. So now the rest is history. Now we are on the 16th year of doing this, and I think it's great fun.
Yes, it's definitely great fun, and there is this willingness to bring business and design closer. And one that I think I remember, I'm happy you said that we're probably, when you mentioned you were too young to remember that you probably referred to Mattia and Lina, because unfortunately I'm probably closer to you than to Mattia. But anyway, I remember when I was starting to teach in a design school, coming from a business school in the mid-90s, design and business was quite far. So designers were almost looking at business as the enemy. You're here for profit. But now after 20 years, it's fantastic to see how they converse together.
And I think you do a great job in trying to bring it together, because I believe, unfortunately, the word design had scared people away and believe that specialists that are trying to find the right color and the right form, etc. But it's much, much bigger than that. And I believe that trying to de-dramatize the word in perhaps more design thinking, then it opens up for not only the specialist, but for all of us.
Exactly.
Yes, and the winner of the scholarship this year will help us continue along this tradition, continue having the impact that the scholarship have had so far. We received more than 80 great applications from design students. We really had a hard time choosing the winner because of the quality of the applications, but we eventually made a choice. And the winner of the 2020 Michael Treschow scholarship is Oliver Weglinski. Because he won because of his sensitive and highly engaged attitude to design, which he demonstrates in both his process as a designer and also in the outcomes of his projects. He is a student of the Master of Fine Arts in Interaction Design at Umeå University. And now Michael will read the motivation.
Well, hi, Oliver. Great to see you. I only talked to you on the phone, so now I see you in person.
Hi, can you hear me?
Good. Yeah, I can see you. I can see you great. And I will now try to read the motivation why you were the one among the 80s. And it comes as follows, that Oliver Weglinski is awarded this year's Michael Treschow Scholarship for his sensitive and highly engaged attitude to design, which he demonstrates in both his process and project outcomes. Weglinski's willingness to explore and address complex societal, technological, and human questions, as well as his ability to understand their intersections, prove a high degree of maturity and desire to innovate. From non-invasive glucose testing and wearable objects that integrate sensorial feedback in remote mining operations to creating seemingly simple interventions in everyday activities in his project, A Station of Being. Beglinski continuously addresses the human condition, choosing to embrace complexity rather than hiding it behind a polished facade. Going beyond the human-centered design approach, his concepts are life-centered, reminding us what it means to be human in a world that is about more than just us. The scholarship is awarded to a student who shows great potential and an ability to address the big questions that we face as a society through interventions that feel natural, measured, and considered. Dismantling normative societal concepts through an approach that embraces a diversity of reality, Beglinski's work speaks of poetic refinement of both form and thought. No one could make it shorter because they wanted to mention everything of you, and that's why it became a little long.
Guilty.
Thank you very much. I have never heard such poetic and beautiful description of my work. Like, I'm pretty stunned by how we came up with that. And yeah, thank you very much, Mattia, Roberto, Lina, and Mikhail for being here. Like, I'm extremely excited to speak with you. And also thank you to Andrea, who did so much amazing backstage work.
Yeah, Oliver, very good. So this is a great achievement. Congratulations to you. You see here, Mattia is holding your scholarship, and it's a big scholarship, a big ambition. So what are your ambitions for the future then?
Wow, that's a really big check and a really big question. Yeah, like my journey as an interaction designer at the UNIO Institute of Design is not finally over. There is still a way to go. And next, I will be focusing on my thesis project, which I will be focusing on how people in the LGBTQ community are experiencing cyberspaces, more specifically social media and things like that. And I'm really interested in queering how norms develop in internet spaces, to expose them and to show how they can also affect people who are not part of the LGBTQI community. So I'm really trying to bring in people from the margins of society in the center of my design project and yeah, show how things could be done differently.
So now you're part of the Michael Treschow family. And you're close, you partnered it with Linda and other who are being before you, and hopefully you stay with us also for the future, for the next one will come. And by the way, a note for those who are connected, stay tuned because this is a yearly scholarship. So we will deliver this every year, and on our website, the House of Innovation, especially of the Garden, you will find information to how to apply for the next year. Mattia, so this is something that gives us big hope for the future.
Absolutely. Michael, do you have a few final words?
No, I just want to congratulate Oliver because I feel that you are very most valuable coming into the family. You will belong to the jury from now on, so you will have an obligation. We have great expectations of your future, that you're going to sort of surprise us all. Normally, I would say I would pay your tickets coming to the event. But as you didn't come and you didn't have to spend that money, I suggest that you take a good friend out for dinner on my note.
Oh, wow.
And celebrate that you are now a grown-up and a grown-up designer with good design thinking.
Thank you very much. And I'm very pleased and very happy to become part of your family. I feel that there is a lot of responsibility that comes with it, and I'm very happy to take this.
Super. So all the best, and thank you so much, Roberto and Mattia and Nina as well, and Andrea in the background, who have been able to make all this possible. So thanks a lot, and good luck now, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, Roberto.
So we are at the end. Actually, we did it in time, and it's almost unbelievable. And before, I mean, this is for us was a way to change the narratives. Also, some of the events they have been seen around, and there is many opportunity to reflect. But always, in a way, when we're as a university, we feel sometimes, I don't know, guilty or in the duty to outreach outside to bring people in, and we enjoy to have conversation with people. This year we tried also to open up the doors from what's happening inside. Our research, our doubts, our research on framing, our exploration in AI. Hopefully this has been something that has been interesting. What we share is just inklings of our thoughts. It's not the result, and that's the way we want to engage the outside community. And maybe the nicest thing has been to do this with our students. We never did this before. I want to thank Sophie, Emma, Nico, and Max, because they've been working hard, even if they are still working on their own thesis, so
Yes.
they dedicated time to us.
Yes. But I think it was valuable for them as well, so for both of us. It was a great experience to combine their research, our research, and also the insights from the business community. The event has been recorded, so you can find the slides and whatever we said in the recordings as soon as they will be published. We couldn't address all the questions that were made, of course, but we remain available. There are so many things we are doing. There are so many things we can share with you. We will continue organizing events. But if you have some pressing questions, you are free to, of course, to contact us. We are doing research. We are developing tools and training programs on these topics. Purpose-driven management and innovation, problem reframing, design thinking, innovation leadership, every kind of theme that we've been addressing today.
I think an important thing before we close is that I would like to thank those who are behind the scene.
Yeah.
People and Michael and Oliver, they've been thanking Andrea. Andrea is sitting there. Andrea, you can take off your headset and come here. If you deserve this, at least you need to be. Maria is Maria. No. Maria, you can come here because the garden is not only us. The garden is the House of Innovation. So Andrea has been doing an amazing work.
Thank you very much.
We need to keep COVID compliant, so we need to stay 2 meters apart. Federico, which is part of the Italian mafia, is down there. There we have also a cameraman. Oh, here is Maria also. Okay, so it's. In reality, most of us can speak Italian, so we wanted to speak Italian in the event, but then there was a few people, just a few who couldn't do it.
But we are also very much Swedish.
Yeah.
Jag
kan prata lite svenska om du... That's all, and I will learn. So thank you very much for your contribution. And this is a yearly event, so we will continue next year and deliver this, and we have opportunity to share new ideas, new research. And of course, we are here, open to interact with anyone. People ask for references. We are an open community. So thank you, Mattia.
We are. Thank you, Roberto.
and see you next
see
year.
you soon.